Welcome to I Heart Geek.
And welcome to another episode of I Heart Geek. This is so much fun. Before we meet our fantastic, I mean, this guy's going to blow your mind. We have this co-host, we have this guy in today that is going to blow your freaking mind. I'm so excited for this. But before we get to that, I would like to first talk about Satomi a little bit. Now, Satomi, who's, you know her. Everybody knows and loves Satomi.
Hi, guys.
So on at least half of the episodes now, we are doing something a little different. We're having our entertainment values, and then we're having shows with me and Satomi. We're going to interview. We're going to talk to a lot of different people. And this one is Satomi is my co-host. She gets as much say as me. Good luck.
Y'all better watch out. Y'all better watch out because things are going to start happening, man. And Dub, thank you so much for inviting me to be your official co-host on I Heart Geek. I've always wanted to be the one who gets to say that.
I might even let you finish it today. I'll
Shut the front door. I'm in.
I will let you do it. Today, the ending is yours. Don't forget, we did pay extra for it. So
yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
So would you like to introduce this wealth of knowledge we have today?
You guys, I am so excited to introduce you to this very special, smart, brilliant, dare I say, man. He graduated with a BA. Excuse me, I am going to read this because there is a lot. He graduated from with a BA. English is not my friend today. We're going to start again. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to I Heart Geek. I'm Satomi, your co-host. He graduated with a BA in liberal arts from Sarah Lawrence College, and he has a master's degree in philosophy from the New School for Social Research. He got his PhD in biology from Rutgers University, and he is currently a senior lecturer at Fairleigh Dickinson University. He teaches human evolution, Darwinian medicine. This is so cool. My mind is already blown. Human physiology and introduction to neuroscience. You guys, we literally have like a Marvel origin story right here. He has his own podcast. It's called Mind Body Evolution, where he explores our physical and mental evolution and examines how we evolved and how we live today. I am so excited to introduce you to Mr. Josh Stout, or should I say Professor Josh Stout?
So happy to be here. I'm just really just looking forward to having fun on I Heart Geek and going off in a whole bunch of different directions. It's so exciting.
We do a lot of different directions things. So I can probably safely say you're probably the most educated person we've ever had on this show. I think I can definitely say that. So now I want to just preface this out to our listeners. You know, not everyone is as dumb as me and has like a third grade education. You know, everyone does at least a little better than me. We're going to pull some of these things back to a level that I can understand. So don't worry about it. If it starts getting a little deep, we'll try to shallow it back up. You know. and I say this because
and all the shades in between.
Yes, absolutely. Josh is incredibly entertaining. I really enjoy his podcast. I want to hit this first before we hit anything else, just because I think it's really interesting. I was listening to your diet episode. Now, and I don't know that this question got directly answered, but I want to ask this. Do you think that your diet, just because you've researched it, can your diet make you live, quote unquote, forever?
Nothing can make you live forever. Sorry.
Maybe
downloading, but even then, forever is a really long time, death of the sun kind of stuff. But I mean, it can make you live longer. Eating right is obviously part of the key, but exercise is the other half of it. But there's so many little technical things. I was, talking about how things like fiber can be anti-aging, not just good for you in general.
Yeah.
And so many things like that, where there's really ways that we can make our lives better by understanding who we are and how we evolved to be who we are. We often, think of ourselves as just sort of emerging in the modern world as it is, but we were living on dirt and throwing rocks at things for most of our time. 2 million years of throwing rocks at rabbits, and suddenly we're talking on computers. It's
we're not
been
as
a hard
important
transition.
as we like to think we are. Is that what you're saying? This
Well,
generation did not change everything. Is that what you're saying to me? I don't believe
it did
you.
Change everything. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that everything's changing ridiculously fast. From everything like us old people remember when it still snowed to we went from farming to living in cubicles in just like a matter of seconds, and farming was like yesterday compared to when we were hunter-gatherers in the Ice Age, which was still.
And do you think that our bodies just have not caught up with all of that?
Our bodies haven't changed at all. Our bodies haven't changed at all. No, our minds and bodies are exactly the same.
We haven't physiologically adjusted to digest all of these things. Not really, not even a little bit.
Okay, so maybe we can, a few of us can digest milk. That's one thing, but that's like tiny. And we have a few more enzymes for digesting starch into sugar, because once we became farmers, that became more important. But other than that, there's hardly any adaptations at all. It's only been like 600 generations since the Ice Age. It's for in evolutionary terms, that's yesterday. It was only 16,000 years ago that there was like a mile of glacier in New York City. It's hard to think about how recently that was. I mean,
did it go back in New York City? I'm just asking.
Oh, hey. You step. I'm walking here, okay? I'm walking here.
Ouch,
so out of curiosity, and I do want to get to our main subject.
We don't have to
today,
actually get anywhere. We can just go this way.
We can just go this way. Listen, y'all out there, having a conversation with Josh is like, sit back, crack open your bottle of your favorite beverage, because it's always soda, going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, the one good thing we have done with global warming is I think we're done with big glaciers. And that was going to be really bad. Each glacier got further down than the last one. And so the last one's got down, all the way to New York City, pushed down the Hudson and made Long Island. I don't know where the next ones were going to go. And
but what about the receding glaciers? What about the receding glaciers?
We're moving into a brand new world. I mean, it is going to be strange and warm, and terrible things are going to happen. Like the Gulf Stream is likely to stop any time now. Within the next 100 years, the Gulf Stream is going to be over. Europe is freezing. But long term, we might have stopped the world from freezing. That's nice to think about. In the next 1,000 years or so, we might be thanking ourselves.
I get cold at night all the time. My feet are freezing.
That explains so much about you.
I just need to not be in Europe. I know. Is that TMI?
Okay, can we pop over on the alchemy thing, because this is
okay,
fascinating to me.
So let's set this up a little bit. We all, and we're going to make you go into this hardcore, Josh. Yeah. But now, most people in the world, we grew up. You hear alchemy, right? And what do we think? What do we think, Dub? Lead into gold.
Yeah,
lead into gold. Yes. So
and cool designs, and I want to get into that too. But
yes,
I like all that stuff. So here's the thing: is magic isn't necessarily what we think it is. For most of the time, people have been doing things like magic and alchemy.
Do you mean like the concept of magic?
Yeah,
or like the way we understand it?
It's been a set of metaphors for a bunch of things that completely mix spirituality with reality. So someone like saying, pick a card would have been a way to teach you how to, relate to God. Like the tarot deck was created essentially as a way of telling stories and as a way of hustling as well. Yeah. So all of those things there's always been a con artist aspect to it, but there's also been everything from hypnotism to giving people hallucinogenic drugs. These things work. You give someone a hallucinogen, they are definitely going to have a spell on them. And so a lot of magic has been like that for a long time. And so
it's more like sleight of hand
in its own way. But the people believed what they were doing. If someone was causing you to fly in your mind, they were believing you were really flying in your mind.
Or someone died when you gave them a quote unquote potion that was laced with hemlock.
Yeah, you murdered someone.
That you were a witch. that
exactly.
had given them a
put
potion.
a spell on that. That's how the spell worked. And so alchemy was very similar, where there was a lot of science involved in it, but it was also directly a set of spiritual practices, and it was never divided until alchemy was done being alchemy and it turned into chemistry and they left the spiritualism behind. But even then, there's still little hints of it everywhere. So anyway, the big thing with alchemy was always mercury. And so mercury was seen as a way of doing things. And once people,
so that was like the special ingredient. That was the magic potion.
That was the original thing that people often used to think of as the philosopher's stone, or the thing you used to make something happen. So if you take a pile of the right dirt, let's say you don't care about the Amazon River and you've dug up a pile of dirt from the Amazon River and you pour some mercury on it, this is something people are doing today, that mercury will bind to gold in the dirt, and then you burn off the mercury and you're left with gold. And so this is how modern
people are doing this. Is this how they are digging for gold now?
And destroying the Amazon. Exactly. Yes. So this is how mercury is ending up in everything. So you get a pile of mercury and you just pour it on your pile of dirt that has some gold in it. It binds to the gold. You dig it all out and then you burn it off and it leaves the gold behind. And so that's the original turning lead into gold. It was this idea of using mercury to extract gold from things. So the Egyptians undoubtedly knew about these things. The piles of gold everywhere. This is the way you get gold.
They were they were using mercury, or were they using another substance? I mean,
mercury.
They were
mercury.
Okay,
almost certainly mercury. We don't have any accounts of anyone making mercury till about 3rd century BC.
Wait, how do you make mercury?
I was just looking this up. So you
Dub, I'm so sorry, I'm not giving you. I'm like, my mind is already so.
It's all good, baby.
So you start with a red pigment, the same one you make vermilion from, and it's called cinnabar. And so you take cinnabar, and it's as simple as taking some vinegar and some copper and just grinding for a really long time. If you don't want to do that, what you can do is you can put it in a closed container with cinnabar and you just bake it, and mercury will end up sticking to the top. You can just scrape it off.
We don't recommend that everybody
you'll die.
Really
go out
bad,
and
really
do this.
bad. Yes, you will die.
You will die.
Yeah.
There might be explosions.
When the Spanish started going to the when the Spanish started going to the Inca mines where they were mining the cinnabar, they called them the mines of death, the mines of Don Muerto. So these places were well known to kill the people who were doing it, and the alchemists knew it too. They knew they had to be careful with these things, although not all of them were really like Newton was just taking spoonfuls of metallic mercury because he thought it would change his body and take the gold. Again, remember, all this stuff was a real metaphor. So everything that was happening, right? So it would turn him into gold. Essentially, it would take the gold in his body and make it come out. So he was trying to purify his spiritual essence, literally the way they were turning dirt into gold with mercury like that. But the real project, this is what I was trying to say, the real project was never that. That was a side hustle. The real project was trying to create eternal life, really. And the eternal life was based on a metaphor that actually works. You put the boys with the girls and you bring them together and they make a new thing, and that's eternal life. And so this was the central metaphor for a lot of magic in general, but particularly for alchemy. So if you go back to like Chevaux Cave, so 40,000 years ago in south of France, there was this cave with a basically, it looked like a yin yang of a lioness and a minotaur. And the minotaur is basically having sex with the lioness, and together they make a yin yang symbol. And then overall, their body makes one of those the Stone Age Venuses, those Venus figures, where they're just giant hips and
if y'all don't know it, look it up. It's very very
looks
cool,
like a rap video with no
you'll recognize it.
So anyway,
look familiar.
This activity between the lioness and the minotaur together make the goddess. And so it was always this idea of the unification of male and female. And the powers, right? The powerful female as the lioness, the powerful male as the minotaur, together making the body, the literal body of the goddess. And so this was seen as sort of the central metaphor of alchemy, is the male and female in some way being unified to either represent a higher being that they came from. So that, somehow some sort of deity was separated into these things, or reunifying into some sort of offspring. So this metaphor was actually happening, obviously, every time males and females made children, but the alchemists wanted to make this happen in reality.
So it's basically what we're looking at is early genetic studies more than it's this person with these traits makes this person with these traits makes this.
These are the kinds of things people were thinking about, but once they'd figured out you could get gold out of dirt by pouring this shiny liquid on it, they're like, well, what else can we do? This is magic, right? They've discovered magic that works. So just like the people who could give you a drug and it really worked, now they've got a magic that really works. And
now,
so they
go ahead, finish your thought,
please.
And then I have a question.
So what people started figuring out is that you can make a mercury amalgam, just like they were doing to get the gold, with gold and silver, and then you can amalgamate them together and you get a new being. You get the gold and silver joined together and it grows and moves and makes a bigger thing than you started with. And that was what they call the great work of alchemy, the magnum opus. It was the thing that people wanted to do, the true end of the philosopher's. And I mentioned mercury was sometimes called the philosopher's stone. Other times it was this new thing they were making. And part of the problem with, please talk.
Can you, so I was, you dovetailed right into what I was going to ask you about. So can you describe, what does this thing look like? I mean, is it gold and silver?
I don't know. No one has made it since the time of Newton.
Wait. So no one's made. So is it because we can't figure out how they did it? Or
people have abandoned that as a project. Even though Newton was brilliant, everyone knew he was crazy. They blamed it on the mercury he was eating. Probably not wrong. But we really focused on all the really immensely cool things, like figuring out how gravity works and figuring out how light works and figuring out the calculus. He invented
more
calculus.
Important things than money, basically.
Well, they put him in charge. They put him in charge of the mint of England. They had him doing money. I
forgot about that.
But was he already like crazy by then? And I probably shouldn't use that word, but he was already
never
affected by the mercury.
Well, see, here's the thing. If you just swallow straight mercury, it doesn't bind with your body that much. It pretty much goes through. So it's better than like the Mad as a Hatter mercury. That stuff goes and binds with your brain. It's already in an organic form that can bind with you pretty well. I don't recommend you eat mercury, but if you happen to swallow the metallic shiny stuff,
vomit now.
It's not going to stick to your body as much as something that's already been bound to organic substances.
Okay.
Yeah. So what the Hatter's Mad as a Hatter mercury stuff was, that's really dangerous. Newton was able to survive it.
Just to
but
review,
he was
for
probably
people
crazy.
Who don't know, which is wild because we put him on a pedestal, right?
We should
just to because he's brilliant.
Exactly.
But just for our listeners who don't know, the Mad as a Hatter, let's explain that a little bit. That had to do with the substance that they were using in order to create
a fuller, known as a hatter, would use mercury, and I don't know the exact process, as part of the way of getting, say, a beaver pelt to be the right kind of nice thickness. It was part of the felting process, so you could have your top hat. So in Alice in Wonderland, the people making top hats for the gentlemen were constantly losing their minds by the age of 30 or 40 because they've been exposed to the fumes. Once you have organic mercury like that, touching it will go into your skin, breathing it will go into you, and all of it directly, destroys your brain. And so the Hatter in Alice in Wonderland was the Mad Hatter because of the mercury.
So let me kind of take this back just for a little.
Sorry,
simplify it.
No, this is fantastic.
I'm just trying to simplify it a little bit in my brain. So I'm thinking that the Newton eating the mercury was kind of similar to the 60s when everyone was doing acid to try to find inner peace or whatever. Is that kind of the same line?
Thing like that. He thought it was a magical substance, like the people then thought LSD was a magical substance and not just a drug. And they thought they could then transform themselves into these magical beings. and they would become beings of light, and they could levitate the Pentagon. He was trying to do
Lizard
that.
King. He could
Exactly.
do anything.
Exactly. No, exactly like that. And you know, people that back then were actually entering altered states. Newton was actually doing stuff to his brain in weird ways that were, you know, he was able to do things, see things that no one else could see. One of the projects of alchemy is, you were talking about the symbols earlier, was to come up with this universal language. So there was this thought that either before the fall of man or before the flood, the biblical flood, there was this pan earth
Pangea
culture that had the same language before
it's
Babel.
Sort of Tower of Babel.
Yeah, before Babel.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was trying to figure out what that was. And so a lot of the symbols that alchemists use are universal symbols. You can find similar symbols in China or the Incas, even though they never had any contact with each other. People came up with these symbols over and over again. And so there was this feeling, I think people had it
Can you give us an
times.
example of some of these symbols?
Well, the swastika is an evil one, but it was certainly used
except
by
it
many.
wasn't originally. It wasn't originally
But
evil.
you can find the same kind of sun symbol in China. You can find the same sun symbol in Inca stuff. It's almost always this idea of a rotating wheel as the sun representing the earth, often in 4 parts, because the 4 seasons. All of these symbols you see over and over again, sometimes a cross inside a circle, same idea, right? The 4 seasons inside the sun. These are universal symbols seen almost everywhere. And the alchemists thought that these were codes for creating the eternal life, for bringing this male and female symbol together to make this new special thing. And so they saw it as real gold and real silver coming together to make something, but also spiritual gold and spiritual silver being joined together spiritually to make a new thing.
And like a male energy, female energy,
right?
Also the physical male and the female male, like all of that.
All of these things were together. Yeah, no, there was definitely, you know, in the 19th century, Aleister Crowley and all that sex magic stuff. That was a real thing they were doing as well. They were always trying to produce a new offspring, but that was in their minds. They literally thought of it that way. They said, well, "I'm going to produce a magical offspring."
For our listeners, you know, Aleister Crowley was this. He's very, very fascinating. He kind of had his own cult.
Bad guy, but anyway,
yeah. I mean,
the epitome of evil, and not because he was a Satanist, because he was evil.
He was kind of evil. He was not a good guy, but it's an interest. If you're like me and you like to walk on the dark side, it's a really interesting story.
A lot of cults end this way, with the cult master figuring out how he gets to have lots of sex, and then it all goes wrong after that. And that's basically where all the cults tend to go.
Yes. Well, and any Good Omens fans will recognize his name as well, because
Crowley, exactly.
Yeah. Aleister J. Crowley, I think is what his name became. So
no, that was the New Order of the Golden Dawn, which actually briefly was terrifyingly resurrected as a Greek political party called the Order of the Golden Dawn, and they sort of went out of power after they started murdering people and got caught for it. And that was in the early 2000s, so like yesterday.
And that's why we don't do that, children.
We don't do that, exactly.
Wow.
All right, so back to alchemy. You brought up something a while ago that I found so cool. Is you started in trying to explain, because you have done all of this study. You have studied Newton's papers. You have studied. You have gone on the deepest dive, and there's no way we can cover all of it.
Other people have gone deeper, but I've gone pretty deep. Yes,
pretty dang deep. And so, in a way, you talked about how you could translate this for us here, using one of my favorite, you guys, because last week, you know, it was May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I'm definitely wearing my t-shirt.
Okay, sorry.
So can you explain how that...
This is where we wanted to go. Okay, so perfect. When Campbell was talking about the hero's journey at
Joseph
Sarah
Campbell?
Lawrence, my alma mater, that was then used as a way to explain what Luke Skywalker is up to when he's staring off at the 2 suns and staring at this. This is the hero's journey, right? So Lucas definitely read Campbell, understood all of this stuff, but he was working in a larger mythological context, and so we're quite aware of the hero's journey in Star Wars. There is also all the alchemy. And this alchemical idea of the male and female joining and as being this sort of two sides of the yin and yang. So that's another way to think about it. You've got the yin and yang
Dark
together
side.
are one thing, but they're dark and light. They're the twins. They're Luke and Leia. It's that same pattern, and you see it repeated over and over again in Star Wars. And it's the same kind of idea. It's a little different in that they're not always making an offspring. They're actually much more relation to their father. So the Darth Vader Dark Father is sort of what those two twins are always relating to. And it's a relationship between a sort of higher level to a lower level. Most of alchemy is trying to rejoin the two broken pieces to bring them back together again to make a new thing. But Star Wars is mostly talking about the father being divided into the two sides, the light and dark.
So the father is almost like what the oneness could have been, because you've got Anakin before he goes to the dark side, and then you've got
he was
Darth
supposed
Vader
to be the one
afterwards. Yeah. And so then when he has his kids are like symbolic of that split that happens. And
something
so
like that. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put a perfect narrative on it, because I think Lucas was just trying to have the idea of these two things coming together again. Okay, so I watched a lot of Clone Wars with my kid and suddenly realized that Star Wars is not the movies we think it is as older people. The kids today, or the kids 10 years ago at this point, Star Wars is the tragedy of Anakin. The Clone Wars is a huge work compared to what the movies are. And so, in many ways, I think it was the original concept that was then, the movie was this, episode 4 of this like little thing coming out. But in Clone Wars, they go to the planet Mortis, where they have the father, the son, and the daughter, often referred to as the Ones. And they are beings in the Force. And when Anakin and Ahsoka go there, there's, hijinks ensue, murders happen, fights happen. And at one point, to resurrect, so a lot of these things have to do with eternal life and resurrection. So to resurrect Ahsoka, the daughter has to give part of her life energy to Ahsoka. And to control Anakin, the son has to give his dark life energy to Anakin. So Anakin and Ahsoka have the original Force beings, life forces within them, and it's transferred to them. They end up killing them all. They kill the father, they kill the son, they kill the daughter. They all end up dead. So Anakin and Ahsoka, Anakin and Ahsoka end up as personifying these male, female, dark, light energies together, and leave Mortis, death, behind, and go out into the world. And become sort of the avatars of these new things. Ahsoka can no longer be with the Jedi. Anakin can no longer be with the Jedi and tries to join with Palpatine. Ends up killing Palpatine, but then Palpatine doesn't really die. So it ends up in this sort of complex.
The writing was bad. Yeah.
Going back and together again. So what is it? Rey and Kylo Ren end up as the new dyads in the Force.
True. And
they say it there. So they were this new idea of, so originally I guess it was supposed to be Leia was supposed to be the one that killed Darth Vader, and they were supposed to join back together. But anyway, it didn't work out. But Kylo Ren and Rey have this sort of spiritual marriage to come back together again. So they're recreated as essentially brother and sister, who then get married. This is Egyptian stuff. Brother and sister are not supposed to get married. Isis Osiris, exactly. Yeah. And so by joining brother and sister, they could either be spiritual brother and sister and then really get married, or really brother and spiritually get married. You're not supposed to be really both, right? That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, no, that's not good. But then that makes sense because so Rey and Kylo have to unite in order to defeat resurrected Palpatine.
Exactly. And end up almost resurrecting him in the process. Because they're a dyad, he starts sucking their force out of them.
Right.
And he becomes bodily again. So it's almost literally what alchemy is trying to do, is try to create a new magical body out of these original forces, the sun and the moon, coming together to make this spiritual body, which becomes this evil version of Palpatine. And
But then you have Rey, who ends up really being the one who unites both sides of the Force.
Yeah, exactly.
So she is sort of the manifestation of what you're saying is the
and she becomes all Jedi.
Yes,
and is able to beat the Force lightning and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So she's doing the process of alchemy. She has brought it into herself. She's become the container, the hermetic vessel that seals these things inside. And then from this has been more than she was before. And that's the idea, is you bring these things together and you get more than you started with.
So essentially, with there is a physical aspect to alchemy, but they were sort of looking at how does this philosophy manifest itself in the physical world.
Absolutely.
But if you read the alchemy writings, what you're saying and what you've discovered in your studying is that alchemy, big A alchemy, is more of a philosophy than anything else.
It's absolutely a philosophy. They saw the chemistry as metaphor. So just like the tarot deck is a way to talk about the symbols you see in it. Gold is itself a symbol. So they would talk about things like the earthly gold and the spiritual gold. They talked about higher levels and lower levels. And some of this stuff is a dead giveaway. So for example, there's the spiritual sun and there's the physical sun. And the physical sun was often referred to as the black sun, containing all of the impurities of the world. Goebbels, in his dark Nazi magic, worshipped the black sun. They have a mosaic of the black sun in this castle in Germany, which was the center of Goebbels' cult of Nazism. So he was literally worshiping the material version of the worst aspects of things, the darkness of power.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So now, can you talk to us a little bit about when alchemy, what made alchemy fall out of favor? What turned it in? When they split with chemistry.
It was really at Newton. It was Rick Bratt at the. So Newton was trained with a series of court alchemists. There was John Dee. Dee was like a really famous alchemist. He was using he had this black obsidian mirror that had been stolen from the Aztecs. So he was into some weird stuff.
And these guys were like, they were consultants for royalty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He was the court alchemists. So Newton was working in that tradition, but already people were starting to think that this is a little bit weird. Science needs to move in a new direction. We need to get into things like microscopes and telescopes and really understanding the world. But Newton said, no, there's this higher level out there that we can really get to a further using the spiritual aspects of alchemy. So he went to the original alchemical texts, retranslated them himself into his own understanding, and then based his science on that. So when I was talking about how these ancient symbols are universal and how alchemy is supposed to have this sort of earlier pre-fall language, that's what he thought calculus was. He thought calculus was the true alchemical language in which we could not lie, because math can't lie. It just is what it is.
You just answered a question that I was going to ask, because it was like, if he's basing all of his science on this, alchemical philosophy, it's like, how did we end up with all of this actually usable, verifiable science?
But he bent it to serve his purposes, and it still worked because everything he did was real, but he used it as metaphor. So, for example, why do we have 7 colors? We have 7 colors because Newton said we had 7 colors. There's an infinite numbers of colors. He had to choose a number. So we have 7 colors for the same reasons we have 7 notes of music. You get back to 8 and you're back at the beginning again. And so why do we have 7 notes of music? We have 7 notes of music because of the Pythagoreans, who were also basically alchemists. And they were thinking of the way, if you have a string and you're dividing that string into nodes, those become the notes. Now, later people fixed it, so it actually worked right. But, but the original concept was just cutting strings into pieces to get the vibrational nodes. And so Newton was thinking about light in the same way, as taking a string and dividing it into pieces to get these wavelengths that would be the individual pieces of light.
And ignoring the in-betweens, because I mean, if you're a student of music at all and you listen to something like the Bulgarian Women's Choir, who actually sing on quarter tones, and it'll blow your mind, because there's just so much more that we know now exists in the world. They're sort of almost arbitrary rules that were put on there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, so I lied. I actually want to hand this question over to Dub, because let's be honest, you're the one who thought about it, and I think it's so good. It's so good.
Okay, with your freakish scientific mind, I want to know the zombie apocalypse. Can it happen? Does it happen? What would it take to make it happen?
It can absolutely happen if someone wanted it to, and they had the right kind of lab. You could do it.
Shut the front door. I suddenly don't feel so good. Okay, go ahead.
So first of all, making a zombie is a real thing. So the Haitian zombies are totally doable. It's fugu, it's pufferfish toxin, and it paralyzes you. So basically, you get the pufferfish toxin. You're paralyzed, but you're also hallucinating. So it's like tripping while someone buries you alive, and then they dig you up. Yeah, it's horrific. And so so a few hours later, maybe 8 hours later, you've been paralyzed, but completely aware. And then they dig you back up again, and then they feed you Datura while beating you. And Datura, it has scopolamine, the Nazi truth serum, so it takes away your sort of frontal lobe abilities, and you're left as a zombie. And so you can then be sold to people as a zombie slave, or you could just be the Hugens zombie slave. So does
it just make you like really suggestible? Is that the idea? Or
in that case, you just don't care. You just don't care. And plus, it's done inside a cultural context where people know what they are. They know they've been made into a zombie, and they know they've just died and they've been resurrected.
Yeah, voodoo culture.
Yeah. So there's a belief in what they've just become. And it's
there's
super terrifying.
Like an odd acceptance
that
happens from the mental breakdown that happens.
And
oh
just
my gosh,
like,
this is awful. Okay.
Yeah, it is a bit awful. But actually, just like in Alchemy, it's absolutely two sides to it. In that there's the real zombie and there's the spiritual zombie. And people can take your soul and put it in a jar, and that's sort of the spiritual zombie. They can capture you that way. And they actually think that that's a higher level of power, to take someone's mental soul and put it in a jar rather than physically turning them into one. So again, magic is a set of metaphors, and it's all real in context.
So essentially, magic is a set of metaphors for taking the fugu poison. But they're saying it's magic, but they've actually poisoned you and done horrible, awful things that are illegal.
That wipe your brain. Yes. Yeah. No, I knew someone in Mexico who talked about so this guy comes in and he's like drooling essentially, and their wife had thought he was fooling around with someone, and so she was taking datura flowers and the what do they call it? I can't think of the Aztec name Tahuache, or the Spanish name Floripundio, but I think the English name is Angel of Death. So you take the Angel of Death and you give that to someone in small amounts in the right way.
I hope you know how uncomfortable I am with this, but I'm so fascinated.
And they start to lose their will, and they can't make decisions anymore. And so I heard about some firsthand account of someone doing this in Mexico to someone else because they thought their husband was fooling around on them. So these are real things that people really do.
I thought you were going to go down the line of the ants that get the.
Yeah, we can go there too, but that was just on step one. Okay. So what's trendy these days in all of the the zombie apocalypse movies these days is the idea of some sort of fungal spore that infects your brain and makes you do what it wants. And there was the cordyceps
series and one of the best games ever. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the idea is the ants eat the fungal spore. It goes into their brain and it causes them to go up and clamp onto a piece of grass, and then a mushroom grows out of their brain. We actually have these in New Jersey. I've seen it not with ants, but with flies. Yeah. So
you go into toxic waste. So
no, but you go into your backyard in New Jersey, and you'll find flies on the underside of a leaf with their wings wrapped around the leaf, and on the bottom of the fly is this big blob of fungus. And so it's happening everywhere. presumably it's not happening to people, except kind of is it? The thing is, I wasn't sure if you were actually frozen, so tell me.
No, I'm
No,
freaking
she's
out.
horrified.
I'm freaking out. I mean, I know some people that I'm like, maybe they got their
I've
hands
seen
on
the
this.
subways. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So
Hey.
many of the diseases we have, people are starting to manipulate us in real ways. So there's decent evidence that syphilis makes people want to have risky sex. There's even better evidence that the flu makes you want to socialize, particularly when it's asymptomatic. So if you have the asymptomatic flu, so it can spread itself. Exactly. And once you become symptomatic, you don't want to spread it. You don't care anymore. You're like, go home. But during that little window when you're the most dangerous, it encourages you to be social. And there's decent evidence for that. But that's not the super scary stuff. The super scary stuff for me is the experiments people are now doing to actually change people's brains. And so one of the cold viruses is called the adenovirus, and it is used frequently for genetic manipulation. You can take CRISPR and you can put a gene in the adenovirus, and then you can use the
CRISPR,
adenovirus.
for those of you who don't know, this is Yes. Let's. I mean, we can get.
So many ways
this
back.
It's super fascinating. Can you figure out a way to, like, just in 2 sentences?
Make it so I can understand.
It's just gene editing. It's the same thing you would do with a film. You just splice out a piece of film, you put a new piece of film in, except this piece of film is DNA
explanation.
and is the thing that makes everything happen.
Yes.
So you use CRISPR to splice in this new gene into your adenovirus, and the adenovirus goes around and finds itself a target cell and puts that gene in the target cell. And so you can actually put specific genes in things. And so recently they've been studying, can I do this to a brain? And they've been using adenoviruses to target specific neurons in a brain to turn them off. And so far they've gotten as far as doing it to a rat, and they can turn off portions of a rat's visual field using an adenovirus. Now, you wanted to talk of zombie apocalypse. This is all great research that people are doing, but they're using a freaking respiratory virus to do it. You could imagine if they targeted the wrong set of neurons, you could have something that could really get loose from a lab and start infecting people. And we aren't quite where we actually know how to deaden someone's, say, free will and turn on the part that makes you eat brains, but it's not that difficult. We're only a few steps away.
All of a sudden,
So is this basically just the next step after GMO? Everyone has their opinions on that. We're not going to get into it, but is that basically the starting ground for that? This
is genetic manipulation of things that are currently living, which is wonderful. For right now, we can cure sickle cell anemia by changing the gene that makes sickle cell anemia in a living, existing human. But
humans are bad.
So next stage is where it all goes wrong, and you start using it because you think people are too strong-willed, and you target cells in the will,
and then we're living
a virus.
We're living in serenity. We're literally living in Firefly serenity at that point in time.
And if I wanted to do this, one way to do it, and a shortcut would be ask the AI how to do it, because the AI would know more than me.
Don't give anybody ideas.
That's my problem.
On the show, we're split on AI. I'm very anti. We have a guy that welcomes it with opening arms. So it's
this is how you could make it go wrong if you wanted to. Again, it's what path do you want to go on? But
out of every million people,
ask
let's say
AI how
there's
to
one
destroy
bad.
AI.
Out of every million people,
exactly.
let's say one is bad. That one person changes everything because it's human nature. So let's uninvent the nuclear bomb. I'm just saying,
No, we're terrible that way. We shouldn't be allowed in.
It's not the majority of people. It's that one.
Exactly. No, that's a real issue that we sort of generally have is we're not good with the powers we acquire. But
with great power comes great responsibility, and we're not good at that as a species.
I want to get your thoughts on this real quick, Josh, because I think that this is along the lines of what we've been going into. Do you think the internet has doomed the species because of the speed of communication? Because we have evolved, we shouldn't. Once we got the cell phone, if that put us forward, 500 years?
Does that
doom us?
It's a parallel with the food and digestion and
Yeah,
you know,
we're changing really rapidly. I don't know about doom. I mean, Satomi was talking about this. Like as you get older, you're like, oh, kids today. It's just always.
Well, it's a pretty big difference. I mean,
Yeah. But I've noticed my attention span has gone down. I don't read the books I used to read. The ancient Greeks talked about this. They talked about the transition to now we all can write. What are we going to do about losing our memory? The ancient Greeks were able to memorize all of Homer. That was how Homer got passed down. Was they memorized the entire damn book, and then finally Homer just wrote it down. We don't do things like that. We don't have those capabilities, and we lose capabilities constantly. Just physically. In the 19th century, a strong man for a circus would bite through a railroad spike, and that was a real thing. That wasn't fake. The memories we have are not able to do what we could do in the past, and it's changing in our lifetime. So the way our jaws and teeth have gotten weaker since the 19th century because we choose soft food, all the packaged food, we're doing the same thing to the packaged information. We're giving ourselves little information bits, and we're not able to learn as much depth. On the other hand, I mean, I think what I can do right now is the counterexample of what happens when someone goes down every rabbit hole. I have been going down every rabbit hole on the internet that interests me since the internet existed, and now I'm an ADHD monster of little pieces of information in every direction. And this is a real capability as well, that once you have different fields of knowledge you can hold at the same time, new things can grow out of it. New possibilities arise. So
I have
there's
noticed
hope to it as well.
There's been a movement like in things like the medical field, where before it was all about you went to your one specialist, and they barely talked to their other doctors, and now we've got quite a few practices make sure that all of your information is centralized so that everybody's talking to each other. And so there's more cross-pollination of knowledge.
If you want to live in a holistic world, it's important to have people who are thinking holistically. Holistically is another way of saying this kind of ADHD approach to looking at everything all the time, which can drive us mad, and I think but can bring new things. We just don't know where it's going right now. And again, we're at a very interesting, anxiety-causing time. And it's been that way for a while now. We evolved to live in a place where things always stay the same. Things will be the same for 1,000 years. 1,000 years in the future, it will be the same. And it's not like that. And so we don't know what to do with ourselves. We don't know who we are, or how to act, or what to be. Marriage, dating, etc. is all strange and weird now.
We forget how much it's changed and how much it's continued to change.
Accelerating.
And accelerating, so nobody's getting a chance to sort of get their sea legs because we're constantly being thrown off balance.
We're 2-year-olds with dynamite.
We're 2-year-olds with dynamite, exactly. And the connection to the internet tells us to make things better with dynamite. It's all full of basically the dynamite version of Mentos and Coke. It's like, let's try this.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
Josh, I got to tell you, it is such a joy to have you on. This has been such an incredible, fascinating episode. I cannot wait to have you back. We're going to talk about more things. I do want to say to our listeners, because you've heard how interesting and brilliant he is, and he's got so many really fun takes. If you've got something that you would like to hear us talk to Josh about, or that's this conversation has set your mind on fire, let us know, because we're definitely going to be having him back. But in the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this episode of iHeart Geek. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
We really appreciate it. Everybody out there, make sure that you smash that like button. I just did it. I just got tropey on you. You're going to smash that like button, follow. You can check us out at our website, iHeartGeek.com. Use the .com. We paid extra for it. You can check out the podcast on any platform you listen to your podcasts on. We are so happy to be here. My name is Satomi Hoffman. I'm here with Dub. And of course, our wonderful guest, Josh Stout. Again, thank you for joining us. And remember, everybody, keep on geeking on.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.